Then he nodded in satisfaction. Based on your reply, I've decided what sort of training to give you. Climb was about to thank him, but a hand moved out to stop him. But I am sorry to say it appears you have no innate aptitude. If I were to really commit to training you, it would take a long time, and I don't have that luxury. I'd like to train you in a way that is effective and possible in a short amount of time, but it's quite intense. Climb gulped. Seba's eyes sent a chill up his spine. They were the piercing eyes of someone whose power surpassed Gazef's best efforts, as impossible as that seemed. That was why he couldn't answer immediately. I'll be blunt, you could die. He wasn't kidding. Climb sensed that. He didn't mind dying if it was for Rena's sake, but he definitely didn't want to die for his own selfish reasons. He wasn't a coward, no, maybe he was. He swallowed and wavered. For a little while, it was so quiet they could hear a far-off commotion. Whether you die or not depends on your spirit. If you have something precious to you, if you have reason to cling to life, even if you were brought to your knees, you should be all right. Wasn't he going to teach me martial arts? Climb began to wonder, but that wasn't the issue at this point. He considered the meaning of Seba's words, digested them, and then replied, I am ready. Please train me. You mean you're confident you won't die? Climb shook his head. That wasn't it. He wanted to cling to life even if it was on his knees because he always had a reason to. Having perhaps read these feelings in Climb's eyes, Sebas nodded emphatically. Understood. Then let us begin the training. Here, yes. It will only take a few minutes. Prepare your weapon. What in the world are we going to do? Climb drew his sword and faced the unknown with a mixture of apprehension and confusion, as well as a tiny bit of anticipation and curiosity. The ring of the blade sliding against its sheath echoed in the narrow alley. Climb pointed the sword at Seba's eyes, and Sebas stared at him. Okay, here I go. Do your best to stay conscious. And the next moment, it was almost like blades of ice had shot out from him in every direction. Climb had no words. What was really swirling around Sebas was a killing intent. A thick, dark presence surged over Climb like a wave, almost enough to crush his heart at that moment. He thought he heard a scream. It sounded like someone's soul was breaking. The scream could have come from close by or far away. It could have even come from his own mouth. Tossed on the murderous black torrent, Climb felt his consciousness beginning to white out. There was so much fear. His mind was trying to let go of consciousness to avoid it. Is this how much of a man you are? I am just getting warmed up. Seba's disappointment echoed loudly within Climb's fading awareness. Those words cut Climb deeper than any blade could. It was enough to make him forget the terror coming at him, even if only for a moment. Bah bum. His heart thumped once loudly. He exhaled sharply. He was so scared. He wanted to run away, but he desperately stood his ground with tears in his eyes. His hands shook, and the tip of his sword wobbled crazily. His mail shirt was making a racket because he was shaking so hard. Still, he desperately clenched his jaw to stop his teeth from chattering. He tried to withstand his terror of Sebas. Sebas snorted at Climb's unseemly state and slowly began to ball up his raised right hand. In less than a few blinks, it had become a round fist. Then one of them slowly began moving back, as if it were being drawn like a bowstring. Realizing what was about to happen, Climb shook his head, trembling. Sebas, of course, would not entertain his wish. Well then, please die. Like an arrow released from a fully drawn bow, Sebas's fist zoomed forward with a roar of ripping air. This is instant death. Climb sensed it in slow motion. His mind was seized by the perfect image of death, an iron ball much taller than he was zooming straight for him at a furious speed. If he shielded himself with his sword, the fist would smash through like it was nothing. His entire body could no longer move. He was so tense he frozen. There's no way to escape the death I am facing. Climb gave up, but then got irritated at himself. If he wasn't going to die for Rena's sake, then why didn't he just give up back then? He should have died shivering all alone in the rain. He saw Rena's beautiful face. They say a person's life flashes before their eyes when they ray on the brink of death. Supposedly, that's the brain groping through the memories of the person's entire past for a possible way to escape. So Climb found it strange that the last thing he would see was the smile of the master he loved and respected. Yes, she was smiling. She hadn't smiled for him when she was young right after she saved him. When did she start smiling for me? He couldn't remember, but he did remember her timidly doing so. Would that smile become a frown when she heard he died? Would thick clouds blot out the sun? Damn it, Clime's heart flooded with rage. His life had been tossed into the street and she had picked it up. That meant this life was not his. He existed for Renna to make her even a little happier. There has to be some way to escape. The fierce emotion shattered the chains of fear. His hands moved. His feet moved. The eyes he'd been trying to squeeze shut flew open and frantically shifted to the fist rushing at him with incredible speed. It was like all his body's senses had been sharpened to extremes, as if he could detect the slightest vibration in the air. It said there exists a phenomenon known as hysterical strength. It's the unbelievable potential people are able to exhibit in extreme situations. This is because their brain releases the limiter holding back their physical power. The brain secretes large volumes of hormones. It concentrates the mental faculties, all for the purpose of survival. Suddenly, the person can process a vast amount of information at high speed. This helps them discern the appropriate course of action. Climb entered the realm of the best warriors for a brief moment. But Seba's attack was still faster. Surely it was already too late. He probably wouldn't have time to dodge the fist. Still, he had to move. There was no way he could give up. He could tell he was moving like a tortoise in this intensely compressed period of time, but he desperately twisted his body. Then Seba's fist blew by Clime's face. The ensuing wind pulled out a few of his hairs. A quiet voice reached his ears. Congratulations. How does it feel to have conquered the fear of death? Climb stood there with a dazed expression, not understanding what he'd just been asked. How was it? How did it feel to face death? And how does it feel to have overcome it? Breathing hard, Climb stared at Seba's with an empty expression. It was as if he'd lost something. His intent to kill seemed like a lie. Seba's words sank into his brain, and he finally felt relief. As if the violent drive to kill had been propping him up, Climb crumpled to the ground like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Flat on the road, he voraciously sucked fresh air into his lungs. You're lucky you didn't die of shock. It happens sometimes. People become convinced they will actually die and give up on life. Climb still tasted something bitter in the back of his throat. He was sure it was the taste of death. If we repeat this a few times, you should end up able to overcome ordinary fear. We need to be careful, though, because this stimulates your survival instincts. If they grow numb to it, you won't be able to recognize clear danger. You always need situational awareness. Forgive me, but who or what are you? Climb gasped from below. What do you mean? That killing resolve was not the sort a normal person can project. So what in the world? For now, let us say I am just an old man who has confidence in his strength. Climb couldn't take his eyes off Seba's smiling face. The expression seemed born of kindness, but it also seemed like the fierce grin of one with absolute power. Its power even surpassed Gazef, a man who might far exceed Gazef, the strongest warrior from any of the nearby nations. Climb decided his curiosity would be satisfied with that. He didn't think it would be right to press the issue. Still, the question of who this old man Sebas was lingered stubbornly in his mind. He even wondered if he might be one of the 13 heroes. Then I think it's about time to get going. Wait, there's something I want to ask you. A terrified voice echoed out from behind them, interrupting Sebas. 43 late fire moon, September 9:42 a.m. Brain left Gazef's house. He turned around and, thinking ahead to his return, took mental note of what the building looked like. When Gazef had brought him here, he'd been only half conscious because of his low body temperature. He didn't really remember it. He knew the location of Gazef's house because he'd been gathering information on him. He planned to challenge him to a duel in the future, but this was just second-hand information. There were slight discrepancies with the truth. PSH, there's no sword stuck in the roof. He cursed the information dealer who told him such half-baked rumors. He took a close look at the house. It was far smaller than the mansions nobles lived in. It seemed more like a place for regular citizens with a little extra money. Still, it was big enough for Gazef and the elderly couple who served him. Having memorized the image, Brain set off. He wasn't going anywhere in particular. Before, he might have wanted to go hunting for weapons, armor, or magic items, but not anymore. I wonder what I should do. His grumbles disappeared into the air. He thought he wouldn't mind just vanishing somewhere. He was still attracted to the idea of dying. When he searched his heart for what he desired, he found a gaping hole. His goal had been completely destroyed. Not even a husk of it remained. So why? He glanced down at his right hand. He saw his katana. He wore mail under his shirt. He had been holding his katana tightly on his way to the capital, out of fear. Even though he knew it would have little effect on the monster Sholtia, who repelled his full-strength attacks with a fingernail, he was anxious without it. So why am I holding it now? He should have been able to leave it behind. Am I still anxious? Brain thought, then shook his head. No, but in the end, he couldn't figure out what motivated him to bring the sword. Brain walked along, remembering his first visit to the royal capital. Some buildings, like the Wizards Guild and the castle, hadn't changed, but he also saw lots of new buildings. As he enjoyed the stroll down memory lane, he came upon a disturbance happening down the road. He frowned at the commotion. He could sense the bristling sensation of violence from the center of the crowd. Guess I'll go somewhere else, he thought, but just as he turned in a different direction, an old man caught his eye. He was approaching the center of the crowd with such fluid motions he seemed to be gliding. Huh, what the heck? How does he do that? The words slipped out of Brain's mouth. He blinked several times. The way the old man moved was just too unbelievable. Brain thought he must have just seen a waking dream or the workings of some kind of magic spell. Brain probably couldn't do that himself. It was a skill that required a complete grasp of another's consciousness. It also required understanding the overall waves of the pushing and shoving crowd. It was the pinnacle of movement itself. With zero hesitation, Brain's legs carried him toward the crowd of people. After pushing and shoving his way through to the center, Brain emerged just in time to see the old man swiftly whack the other man's jaw. What the heck? Would I even be able to block that? It seems tricky. Was he manipulating the guy's attention and gaze? Maybe I am thinking too hard. Still, that punch was clean enough to be included in a training manual. As Brain ruminated on the attack he just witnessed, an impressed grunt escaped his lips. It wasn't as if he'd seen it clearly. It was extremely difficult to evaluate fistfighters and swordsmen on the same scale. Still, from just that short amount of time, he understood that the man was terribly strong. It's possible he is stronger than me. Biting his lower lip, he compared the old man's profile to all the strong people he could remember, but there wasn't a match. Who in the world is this guy? A moment later the old man had left the circle of onlookers. A boy walked off after him. As if tempted by the boy's actions, Brain followed behind him. The old man seemed to have eyes in the back of his head, so Brain couldn't bring himself to trail directly behind him, but he didn't have that worry with the boy. He also shrewdly considered that even if the boy were found out, he would be safe. As soon as he started after them, he realized there were multiple people shadowing either the old man or the boy, but Brain didn't care. Eventually, the two of them turned down dimmer and dirtier streets. Brain became concerned. It was almost like the man was leading them somewhere. Just as he started to question if the boy didn't wonder where they were going, he called out to the old man. Fortunately for Brain, they began having a conversation immediately around a corner, so he hid behind it and listened. To sum up their conversation, the boy wanted lessons from the old man. There was no way. An old guy that strong would never take this little turd as a disciple. Comparing their ability levels, Brain figured that if the boy was a pebble, the old man was a huge gem. Their worlds were too far apart. How sad. How incredibly sad that he can't even see the gap in their abilities. Leave it at that, kid, Brain whispered silently in his head. He meant it for the boy, but at the same time he was mocking his foolish old self. He had been convinced he was the strongest. As he listened, he didn't care much about the brothel. The old man appeared to offer the boy some training this one time. He had no idea what the old man saw in him. What could it mean? Or was he missing something? Nah, that couldn't be. That brat has barely any ability as a warrior and next to no potential. What kind of training would it be? He could hear from his current position, but he couldn't see. Letting his curiosity get the better of him, he moved, concealing his presence, to peek around the corner. That was when a horrifying presence pierced his entire body. He let out a wordless shriek. His entire body froze. It was like the breath of a gigantic carnivorous beast. The world was so coated in an overwhelming sense of impending death that he couldn't blink, much less move. He felt like even his heart had stopped. This presence could have rivaled Sholtia Bloodfallen's, the one Brain believed to be the most powerful in the whole world. A weaker man's heart would probably have actually failed, far from seeming to stop. His legs shook so hard he fell back onto his butt. If this is what it's like for me, that kid is probably dead, passed out if he's lucky. Scared though he was, Brain crawled into a position from which he could see the two figures. What he saw was so unbelievable, he completely forgot his fear for a split second. The boy was still standing. The same fear assailing Brain made the younger man's legs tremble, but he was still standing. What the heck? How can that kid still be on his feet? Brain couldn't understand how the boy could stand when his own legs had humiliatingly given out. Does he have a magic item or martial art that protects him from fear? Or was he a talent holder? Those things were completely out of the question, but seeing how helpless he looked, Brain sensed it was something else. It was an impossible conclusion, but it was the only one he could come up with. The boy was stronger than him. No way, there's just no way that can be true. He was probably working out, but he wasn't anywhere near big enough. Judging from his footwork and his technique as he detailed the old man, Brain didn't think he could have a terrible amount of ability. The boy didn't seem to be made of much. But this outcome said otherwise. What is going on? Am I really that weak? His vision began to blur. He realized he was crying, but he didn't have the energy to wipe away the tears. Wog, NGH, he frantically stifled his sobs, but the tears fell one after the other. Why? He clenched the dirt beneath him and stood up. Still, he was immobile. The desire to kill was pummeling him. It was like his feet were under someone else's control. They were paralyzed. All he could do was look up and observe the old man and the boy. He could see the boy's back. The boy was still standing. He was still facing the old man, projecting all that bloodthirst. He thought the boy was weak, but now he seemed so far beyond him. Am I really this weak? He was irritated at himself. Even when the killing urge vanished, he could barely stand. It seemed like the boy and the old man were going to continue their training, but unable to hold himself back any longer, Brain mustered his courage and jumped out from behind the corner. Wait, in his current state, Brain didn't have the wherewithal to consider that he shouldn't interrupt them or that he should wait for a better moment. The boy whipped around with a jerk of his shoulders, startled at the panicked voice. If Brain had been in his position, he probably would have reacted the same way. First, please accept my heartfelt apology for interrupting you. I couldn't wait. Do you know him, Sir Sebas? No, I do not. So you don't know him either? They regarded him suspiciously, but he had expected that. My name is Brain Unglaus. Please allow me to apologize again for interrupting you. My deepest apologies. He bowed even lower than the first time and sensed the pair shift slightly. When enough time had passed to properly express his regret, Brain lifted his head. He could tell they were a little less wary of him now. And what is it you want? At the old man's question, Brain flicked his eyes to the boy. What could you possibly want with me? It was difficult for Brain, but he asked the puzzled boy, why, how were you able to stand in the face of such murderous pressure? The boy's eyes widened slightly. Because he was holding a neutral expression, even that small change implied a large emotional shock. I want to know. That was beyond what a normal person can handle. Damn it, excuse my language, it was beyond what even I could take. But you rayed different. You did it, you stood. How did you do it? Up against something so powerful. He was so agitated it slipped into his speech. But he couldn't hold himself back. He fled from the overwhelming power of Shaltia Bloodfallen. This boy had stood there when faced with an equal thirst for blood. Where does the gap come from? He just had to know. Perhaps his intention had gotten through. The boy seemed flustered, but still gave the question careful consideration before replying, I don't know. I have no idea why I was able to stand my ground in such a murderous storm, but it might have been because I was thinking about my master. Your master? Yes, I was thinking about the person I serve, and I managed to hang on. Brain wanted to shout, there's no way that's all you did, but the old man began to speak. So your loyalty is so great it overcomes fear. Sir Unglaus, people can display unbelievable power if it is for someone they hold dear, like how a mother can lift the beam of a collapsed house to save her child, or how a man can hold his wife by one hand if she is about to fall. That is, I believe, what human strength is. This boy was able to tap into that power, and he is not the only one who can do that. If you have something you could never give up, you can probably display power beyond what you think you have as well. Brain couldn't believe it. His thirst for power, which he thought he could never give up, had turned out to be meaningless, hadn't it? He'd easily broken, become frightened, and run away. His expression had been clouding over, but he snapped back to attention as Sebas continued. When you cultivate something on your own, it's weak, because if you bend, that's the end. If instead you build something with another person or for someone, you may bend, but you won't break. Brain wondered, do I have anyone like that? But he didn't. He decided they weren't useful to him and thrown away those relationships. So the things he abandoned in his craving for power were actually the most important. Brain laughed. His whole life was mistake after mistake.